Ladies and gentlemen, a man delivered flour, food that Kenyan families survived on, and his truck was burned down to ashes. Not because of what it was carrying, because of where it came from. Someone looked at that truck, identified its region, and made a decision.
Kwa hapa kwa huzuni sana vile mali yetu imeharibiwa Naivasha. Tuko na uchungu sana. Nikiwa mmoja wao, hata duka yangu iligongwa pale AIC. Haya, kuna Power Star, wamechoma Power Star, KTS wameimba, wamechoma maroli ya Kanini, lori 8 zimechomwe. Na hii hatutakubali tafadhali. Vijana, wacheni tuache kuharibu biashara ya watu. Sisi ni wakulima wadogo. Sasa ukikuja kuharibu biashara yangu na ni mimi nimekuajiri, biashara imekuuliza nini? Sisi tuko hapa tunapigania mafuta. Mafuta na biashara inakujia wapi? Tuko hapa tusimamishe kazi yetu, mafuta iaguke, sio kuharibu biashara ya mtu. Wengine tuko na maroni. Unachukua roni ndio uweke duka yako hapo, alafu unakuja unabeba paka simu zote. Ni mtu atahazia wapi? Tafadhali vijana na waomba. Tuache hii tabia na tafadhali siku ya leo tuweke security kaa watu wa business community, tulinde mali yetu. Asante.
Kitu ya kwanza tunaomba vijana. Bei ya mafuta imeenda juu.
That is not protest. That is targeting. And in this country, targeting has an history that nobody in power wants to talk about honestly. On May 18, 2026, during a fuel price protest in Naivasha, an Actros 3340 truck belonging to Chesumei MP Biego Polo, valued at over 20 million shillings, was burned down to ashes. The truck had just delivered unga from Eldoret to Kanini Araka wholesalers in Naivasha. The MP stated publicly that the perpetrators identified the vehicle as coming from the North Rift region. That identification was the reason it was destroyed. The truck was an heavy commercial freight vehicle worth over 20 million shillings. It was not carrying fuel. It was not a government vehicle. It was carrying food. The member of a parliament said it clearly in his public statement that there was a coordinated active targeting and monitoring of vehicles and trucks from North Rift region during the unrest in Naivasha. Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen confirmed 348 suspects were arrested during the protest. 4 people were killed, 30 were seriously injured. The government condemned the violence broadly. It made no specific public response to the MP's allegation of a coordinated regional targeting. That silence in itself, a fact worth recording. A sitting member of parliament made a specific documented public allegation that North Rift vehicles were being monitored and targeted during the protest that cuts across the country. He did not say his truck was caught in a random crossfire. He said it was identified and burned because of where it came from. That allegation needed a direct and a specific government response. What it received was a general condemnation of the violence and nothing more. When a government can condemn the fire but completely ignore the targeting, it is not fighting lawlessness, it is managing its public image while the real question goes unanswered. Kenya has been here before during the 2007 and 2008 post-election violence. During the 2024 Gen Z protest or property were destroyed along ethnic and regional lines in a pattern that investigators later confirmed was organized, not spontaneous. The prosecution that followed targeted food soldiers on the ground. The people who organized the targeting were rarely found because nobody in power looked hard enough for them. What MP Polo described in Naivasha a coordinated monitoring and identification of vehicles by regional origin. It's not random mob behavior. Random mobs do not track and identify fraud vehicles by registration plates and regional origin. That requires prior organization, prior communication, and prior decision making about whose property gets destroyed. That truck was not just a vehicle. It was someone's business. It employed a driver, a turn boy. It moved food that reaches market stall and kitchen depots across Naivasha and the entire country. The loan that may have financed it still needs to be repaid every month. The driver who walked away from that fire that night is a calculation about whether it is safe to drive a North-Rift registered vehicle through central Kenya during civil unrest as a permanently changed. Multiply that one driver calculation by 1,000 of drivers across the country making the same decision. When drivers stop moving food, stop moving to your doorstep. The families who goes angry first are never the ones who lead the march. That is truly at stake, or what is truly at stake is simple but dangerous question. Can Kenya allow legitimate economic protest to fracture along regional and ethnic lines without a serious investigation? Who organized that fracture? The fuel price grievances that brought people onto the streets was real and valid, but the moment a truck is banned specifically because of where it came from, the story becomes something older and more dangerous. The power sits with whoever organized the targeting. The cost sits with the MP, his driver, his family, and the every freight operator now calculating whether their route is safe. Every Kenyan whose food supply depends on truck crossing county lines freely needs to understand what coordinated regional targeting means for their daily lives. The MP Polo stated publicly and clearly that North-Rift vehicles were being coordinated and monitored and targeted during the Naivasha unrest. So why has the government opened no specific investigation into the allegation from a sitting member of parliament and who organized the monitoring? The track is now hushed. The public statement is on record. The government specific response to the targeting allegations remains silent. Watch the unrest that eventually comes from May 18th. Watch carefully whether anyone is charged specifically for a coordinated regional targeting or whether every change is simply malicious damage to property which buries the motive completely and allow the organization behind it to disappear into the background. The fire was put out. The question of who coordinated is still burning, and until that question gets a real answer, every driver on the road is making a calculation no Kenya should ever have to make.